Howdy everyone. All right, I'm just about finished with this forward linkage that I've been working on. A few things that I want to make note of. This block here, you have to cut out notches as shown on the drawings for the pins to clear the block. I made these notches per plans and they actually should be a little bit deeper. They should be cut a little bit lower because the pins are a little long and they'll get hung up on this edge as this twists. So you might want to double check that when you're making the block. Make sure that you cut the block down low enough on each side so that the pins have room and they won't get caught up on the edge of the block. The other thing that I wanted to point out is this slit here on this piece for this push rod to go through. You don't need a lot on this forward edge because this piece pivots this way. So this arm goes back. So I didn't need to cut this out so far forward, but I did have to cut it going back a lot. I've just about run out of material on the back side. I don't know if that will show, but I couldn't go aft any further on the slit here. And it's almost good enough. By that I mean this does rotate back far enough to disengage the pin, but it does rub a little bit on that slit, and I'm fine with it. Quite frankly, if I get to that point where I'm trying to jettison the canopy, I've got bigger issues unless I'm trying to take it off for maintenance or something. So I'm all right with that. But the block is now in. It's bolted in place. I've got the slit cut. On the channel piece here, this channel piece, up on this part at the top, not on this side, but on this side, I also had to relieve it a little bit for this rod to have clearance when this piece swiveled back. So I had to notch that out a little bit as well. But it's fine. Everything works just fine. So I'm done with that for now. The next step for me is to start working on the lever arm that attaches down here at the bottom. That will come across over into this area, and then there's another rod that gets connected to that goes through here, that will go through the instrument panel, and that's the actual handle that you pull to spin this around and jettison the canopy. So I'm going to work on that next. I'll probably come back to this a little bit. I just want to get the whole thing in and see how it works in real time using the actual handle. I may have to make some adjustments in here. I may have to open up some stuff. I don't know. But I want to get the entire assembly in and see how it operates and make sure that it fully disengages these pins. So let me start on that handle, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Howdy again, everyone. Real quick, another thing. Now that I've got that eared piece removed, you can see where I was talking about where I had to cut this step down here for the pins to clear. Another thing is, of course, as shown on the drawings, you just make a cut through here. You make a pass through each side to lower this deck, if you will, for the pins to clear. That leaves this center part here a square. But what I had to do, I had to come back and cut the corners off of the square, because as these pivoted on that ear, they would come back and come inward like this, and they would get hung up on the square corners. So I just cut the four corners off of this top block here so that these rods would clear as they come around. They don't come around in this direction. but they do come around. This one comes around the back corner this way, and then this one comes around this front corner this way. They come around like that as this top part turns. So I just cut all 4 corners off just because, but you don't need to. You just need to cut this one in the back and this one in the front for the arms to do that, if that makes sense. It will when you get into it and you look at it. All right. So I think that's it. Let me move on and talk to you soon. Howdy, everyone. So working on this this part here of the latch mechanism. This is a lever arm here, and it's connected to this T handle, this long T handle, so that you can pull this T handle and disengage these pins and release the canopy at the hinge point. So that's what I'm working on now, is just this section here, the lever arm and the T handle. So the first thing that I did, just looking at how this print is drawn, I went ahead and drilled a hole through this lever arm. As you can see here, I just drilled the hole roughly centered left to right. And I basically just aligned it with this edge, or this part of the arm. I basically just drilled down parallel to that. Once I had the hole drilled, of course, you deburr everything and then make sure that this lever arm will fit nicely on the stem of this piece here. So you just want to make sure that this arm will fit on that nicely. You may have to clean it up. I did. I had to clean up the edge of this, and I had to clean up the hole on this because of the powder coating. The other thing, let me put this down. The next thing that I did was fabricate, well, not fabricate, but I went ahead and did the machining on the T handle. So again, just looking at the plans, they give you dimensions for the different things that you need to do to the T handle. First thing I did was this hole here. I went ahead and measured 1/4 inch, just like the drawings show, and I put a hole through it. But I did do something different. When you look at this drawing here, you can see that the handle is oriented vertically. I want my handle to be oriented horizontal. When you look at the T handle itself, the T handle is welded at an angle. You can see from this perspective, the top of the T here is angled backward. Of course, if you flip it around, now it's angled out. And that's to fit the angle of the instrument panel. So if you put this in vertically like the drawing suggests, this angle fits the angle of the instrument panel. However, I want mine to be vertical. And it works out just the same with this angle, because as this passes through the hole in the instrument panel, as it goes back, it kicks out at an angle to clear some of the supports that are in the structure. And that just happens to work out fine. I'll put this back in. So you feed it through the hole in the instrument panel. That will ultimately get a bushing. And then it passes through the pre-machined area of the sub-panel, just like that. When it's connected to the arm, and I'll show you this when I get it connected, but when it's connected to the arm, it sits up in this groove here. It sits up in here roughly like that. And then when you come back around and look at the handle, it sits very nicely with the instrument panel. So that's what I've elected to do. I've elected to go ahead and put it down vertically. So I went ahead and machined all of the slits and holes, planning on having this piece vertical. So I got my hole in. I've got the slit machined, and then I've got the hole up here at this end for the cotter pin, which will retain the spring. Now what I've noticed with the spring, of course you're going to have the instrument panel up at this side, and you want room between the instrument panel and the handle itself to get your fingers so you can grab it. This is the supplied spring, and you can see the line represents, this line represents the location given by the print. If you put the spring on that line, roughly, you can see how close it is to the handle, and the instrument panel needs to be in here as well. Now, of course, you can compress the spring, which is the idea, to put tension on it. But what I elected to do, in order to have the spring lined up with the way that it's shown on the drawing, and to compress it enough so that the instrument panel will be here and there'll be enough room to get my hands around it, I thought that might be a little too tense, too much tension. So when I drilled the hole, I just moved the hole down a little bit to give this spring more room in here to work, if you will. Now when I actually get this installed, if there's too much slop in here, I can take that up with washers. So that's why that hole is not aligned with the line itself. I just moved the hole down to give the spring more room in here so it's not under a lot of tension if it doesn't need to be. And like I said, then I can use washers on both sides to take up that gap if I need to. The drawing also shows the bushing here on the instrument panel, but you'll see they have the spring butt up against the bushing. That's just a plastic bushing. I intend to put a washer here because the spring is stepped. You can see here how the coil is stepped. So the spring is not going to push evenly on the base of that bushing. So I'm going to put a washer between the spring and the bushing. And again, I'll show you that when I get to it. So coming back to the handle, now that the handle is made, feed it back through here and back through here. And I'll grab my lever arm. I don't think I can do this one-handed, but I will give it a shot. Put my lever arm on, and I'm going to try to feed it through the T-handle slit. I'm not going to be able to do this one-handed. However, maybe I can. So now I've got the lever in place. Now you want to make sure that this piece is aligned horizontally this way, left to right. You want this piece to be straight. You don't want it to be turned. You want it to be parallel to this bulkhead, basically. You want to make sure that it's down on the block all the way, and you want to make sure that your lever arm is up all the way. So you want these to be not pinched, but you want them to be secure. And then it's just a matter of putting a bolt through this connection here to connect the arm to the T-handle. And then you can decide where you want this lever arm to be positioned. That dictates how far away from the instrument panel the actual handle is. So once you've got your bolt through here, through this location here, you can decide how far away from the instrument panel you want your T-handle. Hold this into position, and then you can run a drill bit down here through the pre-drilled hole in the lever arm through the shaft on this piece here. So that's what I'm going to get ready to do next. I'm going to make sure that this piece is aligned correctly. I'm going to make sure it's down all the way. I'm going to make sure my lever arm is up all the way so that these are basically snug. I'll run a bolt through there. I'll decide how far away from the instrument panel I want the handle to stick out so I can get my fingers behind it. And then I'll mark through the hole in the lever arm into this piece so I can drill that hole. So let me get that complete, and then I'll go ahead and put this assembly together and we'll see how it looks.